Hello, everybody, and welcome to Bright Founders Talk at Temi. Temi is an international software development company that designs, builds, and delivers software for sustainable businesses and promising startups. Welcome to our podcast, where we bring you the most inspiring stories of entrepreneurs and experts in the software development industry. Each week, we interview successful leaders who share their unique journeys and valuable insights. I'm your host, Barry. Now, today we're lucky enough to have an amazing guest joining us, Namee Oberst, founder of AI Bloks. Namee, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
Great. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasures all are. So thank you so much for taking time out of your day to speak with us. We really do appreciate it. And this is a part where we usually get you to introduce yourself. So could you kindly tell us a little bit about yourself and the company that you work for?
I'm Namee Oberst. I'm the founder of AI Bloks. At AI Bloks, we connect your knowledge to AI in private cloud. So what we are really looking to do is to work with enterprises with sensitive documents or knowledge bases and connect all of that securely and privately, either in private cloud or on-prem, to large language models.
Lovely. And how long have you been doing that job for now?
So we've been working at it for a little over a year and a half. And so, as you know, generative AI really started taking off about a year ago. But prior to that, we had been working on a solution to connect documents to AI, partly because of my background and the whole impetus for, why I wanted to start a company in the first place.
So were you always interested in this particular field? Was it something that you just happened to stumble across?
So I kind of came at it from a slightly different, probably tack. So a lot of people who start AI companies are actually very technical, or they have PhDs in computer science. I actually am a corporate attorney by training and by profession. So I started practicing law quite a while ago. And the reason why I came to start AI Bloks is because when I was working as an attorney for a really large, prestigious law firm, and the partners were billing out my hours at an extraordinarily high rate, I realized that a lot of the work that I was doing could be automated. I know that, people think, attorneys are intelligent and highly skilled. And yes, there is that element, but there was a lot of the element of what I was doing that I really just thought, okay, the name of the game is actually to be able to, let's say, review a complex merger agreement as freshly at like 2 a.m. as I could at 9 a.m. and just really be almost automating this process. And so, what is good at, having the fresh perspective of being able to analyze documents at 2 a.m. or 9 a.m. and doesn't fatigue? Well, that's probably AI. So I kind of came at it from a practitioner's perspective.
And was there ever a time when you were an attorney where there was kind of a hole in what you were doing, a lack of satisfaction, and that's what drew you to start an entrepreneurial business?
So, what's really interesting is I remember when I met my first corporate attorney ever. This is when I was interviewing to go to law school. I went to a really large law firm, and this attorney, she said to me, in law, she said, and I'll never forget this, the more boring your job, the more money you make. She literally said that to me. And I remember thinking about that, and I thought, could that be? Is that true? And so when I started practicing law, I realized, okay, in some ways, the more monotonous and the more soulless in some ways, and I don't mean to denigrate any profession, because I actually, having said that, there were so many parts of practicing law in a large law firm that I truly loved. So I was probably one of the more satisfied people who practice law at a large law firm. But still, yeah, I think that there are grinds. We get attorneys have billable hour requirements that they have to meet. And, if I left the office anytime between 9 and 11 p.m., that was a good day. That was okay. That was an average day for me. So, how long can that be sustainable, right? So I think that's very hard. And as also somebody who was looking to start a family, for instance, way back, I think it was just really tough to juggle that kind of a schedule with trying to start a family. So I think that was the part that was really difficult for me.
So when she told you that information, when she gave you that little motto, did you think, uh-oh, is this what I've let myself in for? Or did you think, oh, actually, I'm glad that she told me now because now I know what to do with my future?
So, it's funny when people tell you stuff like that. I think there are people who might be daunted by something like that, but there is some part of me where I'm like, can that be true? I gotta go test this theory out for myself, you know? Like I didn't really listen, but I always remembered that. So, part of me is like I'm always looking to learn from people. Like so when I meet anyone, I am always looking to learn from like whatever they're doing. So even just from you and my conversation, like there was a way that you approached this podcast, for instance, I'm like, gosh, she's doing this greatly. Like I could pick up some pointers here. So even from that interaction, I thought, okay, that was her perspective. And why is she saying that? There must be some kernel of truth to that. And yeah, like for sure, there is a kernel of truth to that. Somebody who can grind it out from like 9 to 11 p.m. like every single day, 6 days a week. Yeah, that's tough.
Thank you for the compliment. I never reject a compliment, but I'm not sure if it's true, but I thank you all the same, Nami.
Oh,
That's
no,
very
not at all.
kind. In a way, are you trying to, with this new company that you're doing, are you trying to get corporate attorneys out of a job by altering everything?
It's actually quite the opposite. I actually think that, people don't credit attorneys with being creative necessarily. That's not like the first profession you would think of when you hear the word like creative. You think, designer, etc. But I actually think that people who are smart enough and intelligent enough to have gone through that kind of training are actually really creative people too. I think that when you're doing something so monotonous all the time, it almost doesn't allow you to be creative. And I actually think that by taking away some of the more monotonous aspects of like the legal profession, it allows people to be more creative in the way that you can tackle a case, a deal, a transaction, the way you might interact with your clients. So I think it almost is like giving back time so that attorneys can be more creative and more thoughtful as opposed to just like rotely doing everything.
That's a really lovely way of thinking about it and kind of an unexpected way of thinking about it. Yeah. So, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and the life you had before your company, AI Blocks?
Sure. So I don't know how far back you want to go, but
Oh, only as far as you're comfortable. Anything you think might be relevant, but you don't have to go back to like the diaper stage. Yeah, something beyond
Um,
that.
I actually will go back to my diaper stage a little, only because I am an immigrant. So I was born in South Korea in Seoul, and my family moved to the US when I was 9. And I grew up in California. It took me a couple of years to even learn to speak English. So I went to school like not speaking a word of English, and, nobody in my family spoke English. So I really do come from that very like immigrant family background and that mentality as well. So Koreans will say I'm like a 1.5 generation because I came, young enough so I could speak English well, but, also old enough so that, we also had the same kind of challenges, right, of like the immigrant experience in America. So I do want to kind of reference that because I think it's an important part of like a founder's journey to see like where did they really come from. So that was my background, and I went to college in California. I went to Berkeley undergrad, and I always wanted to go to law school, actually, ever since I was like, 15 or so. And so I studied history because I knew that I was headed straight to law school, which I was. And then I went to University of Michigan Law School, and then I practiced law in between my law, like practicing law. And I also founded in India a nonprofit called Food for Cause. It's one of the best parts of like the more fondest memories of my life, actually. We had the great opportunity to be able to live in Bangalore for 3 years for my husband's job when he was working with IBM. And so I started a nonprofit there called Food for Cause, where we hosted cooking demonstrations for local charities. And that was an amazing experience. And I got to meet a ton of amazing, incredible people actually in Bangalore.
Do you learn a lot about yourself as an individual when you go to different countries?
You do, you really, really do, because, you don't have a community to start with. And you have to start from scratch. And it kind of teaches you really good skill set of like, how do you quickly adapt to a completely new culture where you don't speak the language? So I've even lived in Spain, France, China, India. So I've learned to be very adaptable, and you learn to build a new community, and you learn a tremendous respect for the new culture that you're in. And it's really an incredible opportunity to almost become self-reliant.
It's really interesting when you hear people talk about coming from a different culture. I do wonder, like, what aspects of Korea have you brought with you that have been really beneficial to you on your journey?
Oh my gosh, I think a ton. So I don't know if this is like necessarily like, I don't want to make blanket statements about, Korean culture, but I'll just say like in my family, for instance, we really valued hard work, education, really committing to your goal, really working hard towards that, being a person of your word. So like a lot of those things I think, I mean, maybe are true for a lot of cultures too, but also I think is true for the Korean culture.
And did you always know that you were going to be highly driven and ambitious, or was it something that you just kind of developed along the way?
It's funny. I didn't think of myself as being an ambitious person until probably my early 20s, but I realized at that by because of something somebody said to me that I'm probably a very ambitious and self-driven and self-motivated person. So I must have always been like, and even from when I was a very young child, I must have been very self-motivated, driven, and ambitious. And by and ambition is such an ugly word in some ways. So I just like to say that, I think it just means like self-motivated, really.
So often the way, isn't it, when you some self-analysis, you might not actually know the qualities that you have, but sometimes it takes other people to point them out. In terms of that kind of situation, have other people played a big part in your own self-development?
Oh my gosh, yes, so many. I mean, as I said, because like when I really do look to learn constantly. Like, so that's another thing is that I'm constantly looking to learn because I think almost every interaction has something to teach me, right? Like most of the time it's like, what is this person doing that I could learn from that's better? And then sometimes like when you have a negative interaction, I'm like, wow, like look at the way this person treated that other person. I should never ever do this. So those kinds of things. So I'm always really looking to learn from my interactions and take away even like that tidbit, but all of those things really stay with me. So I think in some ways, like, the person that I am at this age is just a collection of all my experiences, interactions that I've been fortunate enough to have with various individuals. And I think that, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, I'll probably still continue to evolve because, there's so much to learn in this world. So everybody has something to teach me, really. So I really approach every interaction with like, I know nothing, like you are the expert of this space. And look, and you came to, this amazing place in your life because of the things that you do well. And so there's always a part of me that's like, what is it that you're doing really well? And how do I kind of pick up some of that and learn from that?
I think that's a really good life lesson. And I think if we all did something like that, I think we'd all be a little bit more successful in life. But how do you measure success?
So I think there are a lot of different scorecards that people have, right? So, in various cultures, like in the Korean culture, they measure, I think a lot, oftentimes, like, your educational background is like a huge way that they measure success or your level of education. Maybe in other parts of the world, it's like, how much money do you have? Or, in other parts of the world, it's like, how happy are you? Or, how fulfilled are you? And I think the older I get, I think it's more the latter. It's how satisfied are you with your life and like what are the people you've surrounded yourself with? And you don't need to be surrounded with like 100 people. Like I just think if you have your core group who just have your back and vice versa, that you just unconditionally love and vice versa, I think that's success, really.
That was a bit of a loaded question because my next question is going to be, are you successful?
In that way, I think I'm very successful. I really do. I have a core group of, family members and friends that I can rely on and vice versa. So I'm an extremely loyal person. And I think that people who are in my inner circle are the same. And yeah, totally. I'm very blessed, really.
It's lovely to hear. And you mentioned also other people in your life. Now, networking comes up a lot with entrepreneurs, and they always state how important it is. In your particular circle, do you have a circle of entrepreneurs, or is it people from all different kinds of walks of life?
I think it is all different walks of life. So, what's really interesting is like when I had mentioned my food for cause journey, I had to build like a different community of people who would promote, a mission like that. And then when we started working in the AI space, I've been, like a whole new space for me, like when you were like just jumping in, right? So I've been very lucky to be able to build a small community of people who I can kind of interact with and ask questions about and even and really just continuously learn from. And also, as we've been growing our company, we've gotten tremendous support really for our company. People I've never met, like literally living in Brazil, like literally saying like, oh, I really like what you're doing and I want to support you and I'm going to write about you. Somebody in living in Italy wrote an amazing article about us the other day, completely like out of the blue, like so nice. And I think the support that you get when you actually start to put yourself out there is tremendous. Like I think I clearly am not a very optimistic person and and not yet jaded. So the world, like if you put good out there, like gives you good back. And that's incredible to see and to experience.
So you mentioned also your time doing charity work. How is doing like this kind of charity work different from an entrepreneurship? Or is it actually the same kind of thing, skills that you need in both roles?
I do. You're totally right. I think it is actually the same skill set. It's like a Korean woman landing in Bangalore, like knowing nobody ever, like, and being able to create an amazing community there. A Korean woman jumping into the AI world, knowing no one, and then being able to create an amazing community there. I think it's really the same skill set. And I think it is a very, very similar experience in some ways. Like one is obviously highly, highly technical, and the other one is, it depends on like more different skill sets, like people who are more connected, for instance, in the community. But, really to be able to be adopted by, a group of people that you have like previously zero connections with, I think it almost, it takes the same kind of willingness to learn, the same kind of humility, the same kind of, almost in some ways scrappiness too, right? Because you do have to put yourself out there. So I think same skill set.
Have you always been so courageous when trying new challenges? Is it something that comes second nature to you, or do you ever have periods of doubt or self-reflection when you think, "Oh, maybe I've bitten off more than I can chew here"?
Oh yeah, no, constantly. I have a lot of self-doubt. I think to do what, any entrepreneur, I think you have to be a little crazy. You have to be willing to do things that everybody just tells you is impossible. You're wrong. You're crazy. It's already been done. Nobody needs this. Like why you? I mean, all of those things all the time, constantly when you're starting something, right? Because if people don't say that to you or about your product, it's probably not worth starting, to be honest, right? So you have to really have this almost quixotic belief in yourself. So I really always say to my close friends, like, I feel like I'm Don Quixote, like swinging at windmills. Like, really, I must be crazy. So it's a little bit of craziness, a little bit of fearlessness, a little bit of like deep belief in yourself, and also willingness to fail. Absolutely. You have to be willing to fail and fail publicly.
That's quite brave, though. That kind of reinforces the bravery, isn't it? Because that's not something that's easy to do. Because everyone hates losing face in front of everyone else, and I imagine when you're a successful leader, you've got more to lose if you fail.
I don't even think of myself as any kind of a successful leader, like whatsoever. I'm just a regular person and I'm just putting myself out there. I really do. And having said that, I think I really did think about this. Like, if I don't have anything that I've actually failed at, that means I didn't take enough risks. So at some point, I just have to keep going until I've really failed, like publicly. Because in that case, if I haven't, that means I've played it safe, like for too long in my life, right? So what is the one thing that I need to just kind of keep doing until I fail that publicly is probably just to keep going, like, right? Because if I haven't, that means I've really just played it too safe.
I think I'm going to have a New Year's resolution next year. Rather than be a success at something, I'm going to say I need to fail at something because then I know that I've tried and risked
Right?
something. Yeah. If you haven't,
Absolutely.
if you don't try, you're never going to find out, aren't you? So it's a great piece of advice. I like it.
Thank you.
Definitely. So how do you stay motivated and inspired as an entrepreneur, especially when times are tough or when the journey feels particularly challenging?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I think that's something that every entrepreneur faces. And it's hard. It's really, really hard. Like, I mean, I think I'd be lying if I said like you don't have dark moments. You really do because you're plagued to self-doubt. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I honestly don't like, I don't have all the answers. I really, really don't. And all I can do is just assess the situation, pivot if I need to, and adjust and adapt. And that's what I've done like my entire life, right? So moving from Korea to America, moving to living in all these different countries, trying out, different things. So all you're constantly doing is just like learning, adapting. So I feel that if I'm just willing to constantly adapt, even a failure, like even if I failed at something, or even when things look really dark and bleak, all I can do is just take that and just not keep butting my head against the same brick wall. I just have to adapt and pivot. So if I adapt and pivot, then at some point I won't fail, right? Like at some point I'm going to figure out a way. And I could fail like 100 times, but if I just try that 101st time, but try it a slightly different way based on everything that I've learned from the past 100 times that I failed, I do feel like at some point I will succeed. I mean, I'm not that terrible, right?
Well, you definitely can't be because you've created a successful company like AI Blocks. If someone's like really interested in what you've got to say today, how would they contact your company, or if they want to get some more information, where would they need to go?
Yeah, oh no, absolutely. They could, honestly, I'm very, very accessible. So send me a LinkedIn message, connect with me. I literally make an effort to follow back every single person who follows me because I'm really interested in other people's perspectives. Like, I think that learning about what other people are working on, what people have to say is like gold to me. You can probably get that from even the beginning of this conversation. So I follow back everyone because I want to hear about what you care about, what you want to talk about. So yeah, follow me on LinkedIn. I follow you back and then you can message me. I'm very accessible. Like I had a conversation last week with somebody who was reaching out to me to sell SEO services. And I didn't really need that service, but I actually looked up the person's LinkedIn profile and I was like, Dean's List in a high school. And I was like, what? Are you a high school student? I wrote back like, are you a high school student? And he was like a little like embarrassed. He's like, yes, I am. And I was like, okay, so you put yourself out there as like an expert in SEO. But you know what? I was like, I gotta like look at this chutzpah. Like I love this.
Yeah.
Like he put himself out there. Wow. So I'm thinking to myself, look at that entrepreneurship. Like when he's a high school student, look at how he reached out to me from halfway across the world. And look at that valor, courage. I was like, wow, like, see, I could learn from that. Like that's kind of scrappiness.
So we're talking about successes here. Let's change the tone slightly and talk about something that's kind of like been a really big challenging moment for you in your life in terms of business and how you overcame that challenge. Is there anything that you can share with us in regards to that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think that when we were starting our company, we had a lot of challenges because we were trying to figure out the market. That's coupled by the fact that, and that's still persisting, that AI is moving at a breakneck speed. Especially in the field that I'm in, working with large language models. We know that we started with OpenAI like a year ago, but open source has really gained momentum. And even in open source, there's a new amazing model that comes out practically like every day. Incredible models. So everything like moves really quickly. So in this very fast moving market, when we first started, like we had real trouble like figuring out like how do we find our footing? Like what do we offer? Like who wants to even engage with us, let alone pay us any money? So that was really, really challenging to really figure out like where do we fit into this fast moving AI space? And so we pivoted. So we started with a paid SaaS site, and then we actually took a lot of the components of that technology and we went open source because we realized there's a lot of momentum happening in open source, and that momentum actually has started to grow. And then and then one of the things that we did is we started to focus when everybody else was really focusing on large language models. We started focusing on smaller models because then we really figured out that, okay, the way that people want to move is to use this in your private cloud. Like no one wants to carry around like these giant large language models that need a, gazillion, that take up so much resources and, GPUs. So people want to basically make this as compact and easy to use as possible. So we started then focusing on small language models. So it's really amazing how I think a lot of companies actually in this space had to really pivot and shift and shift. So yeah, that's really challenging to figure out where is the market, like where are we headed?
It's actually a really difficult thing for you to do, isn't it? Because I remember the dot-com boom. I don't know if you're old enough, but everyone was like, do it, and then everyone was in there. And how do you stand out in a marketplace where everyone is trying to chase kind of the same direction? How do you make your company stand out against such competition?
Yeah, no, that's a great question because honestly, that's what I spend almost my every day thinking about. really, I'm constantly obsessed with this question. So the way we started, and we were very, very lucky that we had a focus. So, the market that I'm in, which is RAG, or retrieval augmented generation, coupled with LLMs. So LangChain and Llama Index are the two companies that really started that. But we actually, because of our background, we started really focusing on financial services, legal, insurance, and just kind of more compliance driven and security driven industries. So then our offering became more tailored to enterprise use cases, tailored to specific industries, and that's something that actually I'm actually not even sure that anyone else is still doing actually within the RAG space. So when you start to build your solution ground up with specific industries in mind and all the features that those specific industries would want to see in a product, I think that also makes your product stand out in a different way. And ditto for the models that we put out. So we put our models to really work very nicely with a solution like ours. And then when you start to target your industries more to tailor that to specific needs, I think you do start to stand out a bit more. So we get a lot of feedback for that. And then because we do want it to be very easy to use and to not be reliant on, all these different libraries, et cetera, et cetera. So one of the feedback that we get is, we love how you can get started in 10 minutes. We love how easy to use it is. We love how streamlined it is. It's constantly, that's the kind of feedback that we get. But while offering a lot of great features. So having a purpose, trying to serve as, I think, kind of having your ideal customer set in mind, also helped us stand out a little bit in this space.
And you've also mentioned the constant change of pace. So are you always in the growth mode? Or do you ever think like, oh, let's stabilize here. Let's make sure that we've got everything sound before we move on to our next growth phase? Because it depends on, some people are always in growth and some people like to switch between stabilizing and growing.
Yeah. So in terms of stabilizing, I think that, it's been hard to do right now because, we are a leading edge AI company. So you have to just always keep on top of the latest and greatest in tech, right? So if we're behind, even if we're 2 months behind, I feel like we'll be stale. So it's not even trying to grow the market. It's just always trying to make sure that we're a half step ahead of the market. We've been able to do that by focusing on small language models, by being industry focused. So these are offerings that I think that has resonated with a lot of people. And now we have something else that we're trying to release that's going to be, another half step out of the market. But if you can try to stay even a half step ahead of this amazing, fast moving market, that's amazing. And, even that's a huge challenge.
So you mentioned the market there. Are you good at reading the market? Do you think there's tough times ahead or plain sailing?
I think that there is going to be an incredible need once I think everything shakes out for this technology. I think the generative AI technology is truly revolutionary. I think it is you brought up software, right? In pre 2000. So I think it is that revolutionary in terms of how it's going to impact so many facets of our workflow, our lives. So that's for sure. But having said that, there are a lot of technologies that are out there that are just like little wrappers or bolt-ons to existing technologies, just combining very readily available technology pieces together, and then they tout themselves as AI companies. And I think some of that is going to have to just kind of shake itself out.
Perfect, great answer. Just to kind of ask a bit of a tangent here. Is there anyone out there in the world, an entrepreneur or someone who you particularly admire, that if you could swap places for the day, that you would choose to do so? And if you did, what do you hope to learn from such a swap?
Well, honestly, if I would love to, I mean, you'd have to go back in time a little bit, but I would love to live a year in Jeff Bezos's life. Like, I would love to learn everything that, he learned. And I know he brought with him, wealth of experience prior to starting Amazon, but I would love to have been a fly on the wall or be his assistant or anything, even his, just anything, just to learn how, he tackled building Amazon. I think that's just an incredible journey. And wow, if I could be mailroom clerk, anything, and Amazon at that time, that would have been incredible.
Yeah, that's a really good answer actually, because I think most people just think, "Oh, I'd like to watch what they're doing today," but actually, I suppose most of the insightful stuff will come from the journey, right?
Yeah. No, absolutely. It is all about the journey. I think there are very, very few customers. You know how it's like you can become like the overnight success, like 10 years in the making, kind of. People think you're an overnight success, but they don't know that it took you like so long and so many heartaches to kind of get there. And I have to think that with these incredibly successful companies, there had to have been some of that, right? For most of them.
Yeah, it makes sense, doesn't it? It's logical because some people they just see the destination, they see where you are now, and they don't see how you got there. And some people have an easier journey than others, indisputably. What has been the biggest thing that you've learned about yourself on that journey?
I really learned that I can be scrappy. I think I always knew that I was fearless in some ways because, I just like never listened to people in some ways. Like, if people like tell you you can't do this, you can't do that, I think I didn't necessarily listen to that too much in my life. But yeah, no, it's really interesting. I think that just being able to watch other people, learn from people. Like I think that's amazing. And yeah, no, I learned that I can be scrappy. I never really thought of myself as like a very like a person who's like a true go-getter, like put yourself out there in the world. So you don't actually see me doing that many. This is like see me out there like writing articles or really putting my voice out there too much because I actually think I'm not like the most out there person, but I've learned to be scrappy because you have to be scrappy if you want to, start a startup.
Is it human nature to be surrounded by naysayers? Oh, you can't do that. Oh, that'll never work. It seems there's no shortage of people wanting to tear you down. Are there just as many people wanting to push you up?
Yes, I mean that's where your core group of, like the people that you love and people who know you come in. Absolutely. But I think most people almost don't kind of they're not they almost don't want to see the success unless like 100 other people see the success. So I don't want to say like people are like lemmings, but there is some element to that, right? Like, right, if you're just starting out, people are like, like who are you and how are you going to do this? And then you get some traction, then people are like, oh yeah, I knew you were going to be successful.
Yeah, that herd mentality is very strong in people, isn't it? It's hard to fight. So we are unfortunately slowly coming towards the end of the session, and there's just a couple more questions I'd like to ask you, if I may. What kind of qualities should an entrepreneur have?
Flexibility, adaptability, a little bit of fearlessness, and being scrappy.
I kind of had a guess that Scrappy might be one of them, but it's worked in your favour. And finally, the last question is: let's say there's someone watching this now, and they really want to be an entrepreneur, they want to start their own company, but there's that doubt in the back of their mind. Maybe they've been surrounded by naysayers. Maybe there's people saying, no, you can't do it. What advice would you give to them?
Just the fact that you're even thinking about starting a company tells me that, you have that itch that you want to scratch, kind of. It's one life to live. Go for it. What do you have to lose?
Perfect. And what a great way to end the session on such insightful advice. Namee, thank you so much again for talking with us today. It has been an absolute pleasure talking with you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a real pleasure as well. I really appreciate you having me on.
Very kind. That was Namee Oberst, founder of AI Bloks.